Okay, hands up everyone who'd like to develop heart disease. Now hands up if you're doing enough to prevent it. What I thought I'd do is give you a couple of tips of how I approach training, why I think you can learn to train more often and enjoy it, and why rowing, either on the water or on a Rowperfect, is a really good choice for you as an exercise, as a method of training. Why it has some very specific benefits that maybe you should understand. The first thing I'd like to teach you is a thing called Obrey's Law, or what I call Obrey's Law. Graham Obrey was a really good cyclist. He actually set the world record for a bicycle for 1 hour, so the distance you can travel in 1 hour. That record had stood for 32 years. And what he worked out during training was that if he didn't train every time he felt a bit tired and crook, he'd never train at all. So he had this great idea that he'd go for 10 minutes. Unless he had a fever or he was genuinely in pain, and if you do have either of those things, you don't train at all, just understand that. If you're just feeling a bit weary or maybe a little bit unmotivated, that's normal. If you go for 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, you'll very quickly find that in 99 times out of 100, you'll be able to keep going with your training. So I always talk about Obrey's Law, and I think he was a great guy, and it's a great thing to use in your training, whether it be rowing, running, anything else. Just go for 5 or 10 minutes unless you feel genuinely ill, and you'll often find that by that time you really do feel like training. Okay, the second thing, the production of growth hormone. You don't need to buy growth hormone, you never do. It's dangerous, it's expensive, and it's very stupid. You can produce your own. What has recently been discovered in science is that the more intense the exercise, the more growth hormone that's produced. Okay, so the amount of growth hormone you produce at any age, and of course as we age, we like to have more growth hormone, it's great. The more intense your exercise, the more growth hormone you produce. And in fact, some forms of really long endurance exercise actually depress it. So, going hard can be particularly good, and rowing you're using your entire body, really every major muscle group through its entire range of motion, as well as being balanced and coordinated. So rowing has some very specific benefits which are only available through rowing. Any exercise is good for you, don't get me wrong, but rowing has some very specific things that make it particularly useful exercise. Balance, coordination, endurance and strength all at the same time. Okay? The third thing, talking about the benefit of hypothermia. When you exercise intensively, and rowing certainly does that, your core temperature rises quite quickly. In fact, in minutes it could easily be over 40 degrees. The one thing that's known to really slow down small tumours is hypothermia. They hate temperatures above 40 degrees. So if you do some hard, intensive exercise like rowing, you can get your core temperature up really quickly. It might reduce your chance of developing a small tumour into a larger tumour over the period of your life. So there's a lot of reasons why you should think about exercising intensively and rowing on a regular basis. Okay, so why specifically rowing is the main question we want to ask. We've talked about growth hormone and intensive exercise. Why is rowing so much better than just lifting weights? We all know that those kinds of activities, rowing on fixed machines, lifting weights, running, they all involve a fairly high degree of risk, some joint strain, gravity maybe, or a jerk at each end of the stroke in the case of rowing on a fixed machine. Rowing on the water or on a Rowperfect, you don't have those problems. You're moving in a fluid way, interacting. There is no stop or start. What you can see from the start is that even if I was rowing a full stroke, my head is not moving. And that leads me to my next point, which is the nervous system benefits of a complex activity like rowing. When your hands and your mind are fully occupied, you're really happy as a human being. It's a very satisfying feeling, and rowing does that. It's a highly complex activity, so you're using everything from my feet to my hands, fully engaged through a rowing stroke. So that's a very, very good thing. On top of that, on the Rowperfect, as we said, a little bit of balance involved, so that uses my sense of balance, my proprioception, which is a really, really valuable thing to stimulate at the same time. And that makes rowing a particularly good activity for a human being in general, as well as the obvious things about the cardiovascular health and the muscular strength and all those kinds of benefits. But rowing in particular gives you that, and so does the Rowperfect to the same degree. Okay, and you can do it indoors and in any weather. So that's a nice benefit without the time of having to go to a boat shed. So you've got some serious advantages on a Rowperfect.